Office Hours Arbitrage number 10, week 10. Can't believe it. When I started, I thought that it would initially be kind of cool and then people would fall off, but it keeps building. Welcome to week 10. Hope everybody had a good week. The results for the round that just started came out. Looks like we're all positively trending. Single account multiple model beta testing is live. So I'm in the beta. I like it a lot. I think, Patrick, you've done a fantastic job on how this all integrates. You specify what your main account is, like the master account. And then, yeah, right, Michael, whatever. And then you just you absorb your other accounts. And it was really easy. If you have two-factor enabled, you just follow the prompts. It was super sweet. And then now all 10 are there, and I can just kind of do a pull-down menu and switch between them to look at the scoring metrics. It's really nice, and I think everybody's going to like it a lot. There are some changes to how your models upload. So you have to include a model code in addition to your secret and public key for uploads. But it's rather intuitive. Yeah, Zen, NASDAQ Jockey, ZBrains, Evolves, whatever we're going by this week. Yeah, it is great, and I like it too. But Patrick, real quick, is it updated with Numerox yet?
Working on that right now.
You the man. Is the quant-quake of it's hard to say, quant-quake of August 2007 included in the train set? I don't know, because they never tell us the dates. I'm going to guess yes. Mike P's nodding his head. So I'm going to just take that as verification. Asking because market behavior might be similar to market behavior in validation 2. I would just want to make sure that I had time before and after that event, because the data leading up to it matters and the data after the event matters. And so I agree, I would want as much data as possible, but I don't only want those very difficult high correlation eras, because that will bias to those kinds of events. Also, kind of in line with that, I really like the discussion that you had in Rocket Chat, where you talk about combining the different eras, right? Can you expand on a little bit on that conversation so we can bring people who didn't read it up to speed?
Yeah, I basically I wanted to have a validation set and a test set that's kind of very representative of my training set. So how I train my model, it will basically generalize and on the validation set as well. So I'd like to have eras from all types of regimes in both my training set and my validation set and my test set, ideally. So the way I described it is probably not the way to do it, but I was still kind of trying to take eras from early on as well as in validation 2 in all those kind of set-aside sets, just to be able to generalize the model as much as possible. I don't know if I'm doing that wrong or if there are other flaws with that, but that was my thinking.
I would say the quickest way to know if you've got it right is if your very first score, like what you got today, if that shows a very big correlation score to positive or negative, that may be an indication something's awry. Wow. Right? Because yeah, you can post a big score, but that could be a spurious correlation. And so I don't want to see an extreme score. I want something that's kind of average. But then I want my MMC to be high. So then I want my correlation with the meta model to be low. So one of my candidate MMC accounts had very high correlation for the previous round and decent MMC. And now this week it has average correlation and negative MMC. So now I think I've overfit. And in your discussion in Rocket Chat, you talked about how if the eras are time ordered, then applying something early to a later period is not consistent with time series studies. And that would be true if the data that we had wasn't already adjusted for that time component, right? And so I think of it this way, and I can be wrong. I'm allowed to be wrong, but each era is just a bucket, and each bucket of time has been neutralized, if you will, for whatever correlation exists throughout time. And so if you treat the bins separately and don't, train and then test using the same bin, you should be okay. And specifically, we do know that there are tough eras, and I think they're just different regimes. And we can't take any kind of signal out of a regime. Like, we can't adjust for regimes because we don't know what they are. And so these difficult regimes are very helpful either as additional training data or to see how you might do out of sample. My concern without using it as training data is that to evaluate on difficult regimes that haven't been incorporated in the training data is problematic, right? So yeah, that's where I'm thinking on that. JRB wants to know, can I be more specific with decent MMC? For me, I'm looking at I want 2.5% MMC so that it doubles, so I get a 5% per week payout. That would be my target. That's where I would like to be. I don't even know if that's feasible, but low single digit, like up to 1%, that's just not going to cut it for me. I'm not going to be too excited. So that's what I'm going with. That's not science-based. That's just me picking a number. You're asking about many of us use multiple accounts. Do you know or have any idea how many real people are competing here? I've always just taken the number of submissions and divided by 3, but that was prior to the 10 account rule. And it's also just an estimation, right? If you just assume that everybody is playing with the rules and utilizing the maximum number of accounts, it's a rough approximation. But I think now is probably more likely that it's still around 3, with the more seasoned folks putting up 10 models. Just a quick show of hands for those with the camera if you have 10 models already. You have 10?
I have 10.
10. Boar says he's got 7. I have 10.
Yeah, I've got 10 as well.
GRB's got 10. All right, so
only
Rudy's got 10. Michael Oliver's got 10. Yeah, so I don't know, maybe push it up to 5. Take the number of submissions divided by 5. People that are active here clearly are racing for the 10.
And how many submissions we have?
Used to be about 1,100 a week, but I don't know how to check that anymore.
Easily.
Mike P, do you have any insight into that?
Yeah, for non-stake users, it is above 1,000. For stake users, it's something maybe 500 or a little bit below.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Is Smart Sharpe that much better than normal Sharpe? Well, we should probably just call William Sharpe and ask him what he thinks, because he did win the Nobel Prize for this stuff. But I don't know that much about Smart Sharpe, so I'm going to punt and see if somebody else wants to talk about Smart Sharpe. Michael Oliver, I think you're the one that posted this.
Yeah, sure.
Here we go.
So I mean, in that paper, they of course say it does better out of sample and whatnot. And in doing model selection, it seemed to give me tighter ranges of hyperparameters than just regular Sharpe. Meaning it was more clear which was the best model according to Smart Sharpe than according to Sharpe.
Quant revamp is coming soon. What are good data sets to get one started? So erasure quant falls a little bit outside the scope of office hours with arbitrage, but since some of us likely compete in both sides, good data is by far the biggest challenge for erasure quant because good data is not free. And in fact, I think there's some follow-up questions related to this. And obtaining good either daily or tick level pricing data on equities is extremely difficult. And I've looked for data. It's extremely hard to find. I think the best candidate data source, though, is the Quandl Wiki Daily data, followed by Big Charts, because the Big Charts API looks pretty robust. Kino.
Yeah,
So I submitted maybe like 4 weeks, I think, to erasure, and I had the same issues. Like, in fact, if you go to the channel, like, one of my earliest complaints is that, like, getting the data is almost impossible. And so what I settled with the help of somebody, I can't remember who helped me out, but like basically, I run. You go to Quantopian. I don't know if you are aware with Quantopian, but basically you go there, you make all your calculations there, and then you just like spit out your list. That's all it is.
Yeah, I do remember seeing that. I guess it was in Rocket Chat prior to the forum, and I may have recommended that too. Yeah, and there was also Alpaca, I think, was another one that was recommended back a few months ago. What are good approaches to get started on the Russell 3000? So this is probably another erasure quant question. Yeah, again, back to what I said, if you're looking for signal using only pricing data, you're going to have a bad time. The most data mined data set, I think, in the world is pricing data in isolation. It's the other data that gets you to the next level. And as Joaquin was saying, sentiment data, what is it, stock twits? There's some empirical evidence on that. And also accounting data. So it's not just the pricing, it's looking at accounting data. So if you can get the financial statements, the 10Ks and 10Qs, depending on the interval of your data, that's where most of these factors are drawn from. Market to book ratios, things like that. Book to market as the inverse, but it still has a kind of a different outtake to it. So yeah, if you can obtain financial accounting data, that's definitely going to give you some edge. And weather data, I know the hedge funds at large love this weather data stuff, especially for trading futures markets.
I also want to see people use sentiment analysis on Twitter. That's a big. I hope someone out there is doing it.
Well, the research is vast. It's actually pretty overdone from the empirical side.
Okay.
I'd say it's played out, and if the signal still exists, I'd be really surprised to find it. But for the sake of this tournament, it still may be very robust. How can I best take advantage of the new 10 accounts limit? I guess too many of my models are highly correlated with each other. That's the problem I have. So how do I overcome that? So I have 3 models. I really like the way I've built them. They perform well over time. So I just train on different subsets of data, and I let them exist together. Even though they're highly correlated, I can still stake on which ones I have the most confidence in. And that's how I'm able to maximize my utilization of 10 accounts. So I have 3 main models and have 3 submissions per model types. That's 9. And my 4th one is something I'm trying. It's arbitrage 4. That's why I said the 4th. But my 10th account, the leftover spot, is what I'm using to target MMC. So I have a candidate model that I'm evaluating, and I'm looking at that. This kind of goes back to what I was talking about, how to use a manual genetic process, if you will. Kill your worst performing model every 10 weeks, maybe. I mean, that's still a kind of a floating target there, but kill your lowest performing one and replace it with something that you're thinking about. And if you do that once a quarter, maybe every 6 months, not too frequently, or you'll miss obvious signal, then you can always be improving. You want to start staking, but you're afraid of recent price increases. Well, I wouldn't be afraid of the recent price increases per se, but do understand that the longer you wait to stake, the longer it takes for you to get paid. So if you are concerned about the numeraire price now, I would just say to ease in, dollar cost average. That's what anybody would say about buying a position into something that you're unsure about. Spread it out over time. Increase your stake over time as well. But again, your payout is compounded. So the longer you wait to stake, the longer it takes to become numeraire rich. So it's a balance, right? It's all about your risk tolerance. I'm withdrawing some of my stake to mitigate some of my risk, but that also limits my future reward. And so that's the trade-off. Any chance of Numerai Quant providing basic, free, clean data? No. It's too expensive. I can't imagine the licensing costs that would be involved. I mean, Quantopian, you had to run their data on their servers, right, in order for it to work. because if you took it off their platform, like Zipline, I think was their backtest algorithm, you had to have the pricing data yourself. So I don't see how they could possibly give us data for erasure quant. Please discuss future plans and ideas for MMC rep. Well, I have a great idea. So we need a leaderboard. I think that's one of the intangibles of the tournament itself, is that we can have a rank and brag about it, put it in our resumes and whatnot. But stability is still desirable to the fund. And so there's probably a way to reward us for not changing our model within a quarter, let's say. So what if we did once a quarter a payout on MMC rep that was not tied to staking, that was purely tied to performance? That would also incorporate the non-staked models to have some chance at reward. Did that once a quarter, kept the total payout non-linear, answering kind of like what I did for my class, right? Some kind of extreme sloping scale, and you only did it a few times a year. That could work. Oh, I just got killed on that idea. No payouts for non-stake models. Well, fine. We can still do what I'm talking about on just the stake people. Payout on stability. And actually, I've submitted a proposal for that. So that actually exists in some of the work product there. Yeah, so, but what other future plans and ideas do you have?
I think it is important to like give people long-term incentives of some kind to submit consistently. So that is something we're losing with like leaderboard bonus going away. Yeah, I don't know. We're in like a tricky spot though, even now with like regular reputation, because if we have like two different leaderboards, like one for MMC and one for regular tournament, it kind of like takes some of the meaning away from both of them, because there's not like one sole like best person. So I don't know. I'm very open to ideas. I've said on Rocket Chat that like if anyone has like good ideas for long-term rewards for reputation, and like MMC rep would be kind of the same thing. I'm really looking for a way to make the leaderboard meaningful over the next few months.
Okay,
So,
cool.
yeah,
So
I
you're
don't
open
know.
to ideas. That's alone is a net benefit. We got lower Sharpe numbers related to validation 2. What exactly is in validation 2? And wouldn't using them generate very specific models, which would have high volatility? We get lower Sharpe numbers related to validation 2 because it's the COVID-19 market reaction. I presume that the data starts around mid-February and ends mid-March, because that would capture most of it. You get the high of February, mid-February, I think, was the market high, and then the sell-off basically starts right away. So let's just assume that that's what it is, right? I personally do not want only that data being the validation set. It's a part of the whole validation. So we get lower Sharpes because that data is an extreme anomaly in the great time series that is the market. Would it make sense to create an erasure-based data repo, kind of like Quandle? Or are there too many licensing legal issues with that idea? Yeah, you answered the question yourself. There are too many licensing and legal issues with that idea. But it's an interesting idea to have a blockchain validated data repo where we know that the quality of the data is good and is verified through people who stake on it. Hey, yeah, I can verify this data is good and I'll stake on it, right? It's like kind of like proof of work or proof of stake for data. So it's kind of cool. I just don't see that happening with this application, at least. So Jason, how long have you been with the team now?
God, it's been over a year now. I think last March is when I started.
Last March.
Somewhere around there.
Okay. All right. Well, that's cool. So how did you find out about Numerai?
Actually, it was just looking on AngelList, truthfully. I knew the kind of job I was looking for. I wanted something in AI. I wanted something small, scrappy startup. I had never heard of the Numerai Tournament before joining. And it's kind of sad because like it would have been something I had a break between my last job and starting Numerai. It's something I would have done in that free time, right?
Yeah, I'd be scared to compete against you, so I'm really glad that you didn't find out before.
My data science knowledge is very poor. So I've been on the side. I've been experimenting more, playing the Numerai Tournament on anonymous accounts for now.
Anonymous accounts.
Great.
I'm gonna need to see those account names, Jason.
But data science isn't my forte. I mean, like, it's certainly something I want to learn more of. But sorry, data science I'm good at. A lot of my jobs have been data pipeline, data like munging jobs. But as far as AI goes, my knowledge is lacking. I haven't really done deep AI since college. That was like 10 years ago. Like the most complicated things we did were like SVMs and neural nets, which I mean, neural nets still are around. SVMs you still use sometimes, but it was like beginners stuff compared to what exists today.
Man, I don't know. Some of the beginner stuff is pretty performant, and so.
Oh yeah, no, it's nice in its simplicity sometimes too. Right?
Like Bohr over here with his genetic nonsense. You know, I don't even know what to say about that anymore. But more power to him.
Yep.
So you have not you kind of participate, but you don't. And so you've been there about a year. So that's cool. And you live in San Francisco because that's where the firm is headquartered. And I've seen you at the office, so I know you at least live close enough to commute. So that's cool. And
walking distance, actually. What
is your official title at Numerai?
I don't know if we have titles in Numerai.
I don't know.
I was
chief bottle washer.
Software developer.
In press, we refer to Jason as a senior engineer.
Senior engineer. Okay.
Senior engineer, or the official
or the compute daddy. I've also called him compute daddy internally.
That was harder to list to people.
All I know is that when I have some problem, or I think I have a problem, and I tell Jason, he says, "No, this actually isn't a problem." And here's all the code to fix it. And I'm like, "Oh my god,
it's,
this guy, like,
it's a feature, okay? It's not a bug. It's a feature. Okay?
Feature, yes, right. Although I did identify that bug when I was in the office in June, when you were doing all that smart contract work, and you like did 40,000.
Oh yeah.
Blockchain.
That was a scary change too. That was a big change, which a lot of people didn't really see. But it was us cutting over the contracts. It was scary stuff.
Found it. That was me. Yep. I did. It's true. Okay, so I asked you where you live. We know what you do for a living, which is solve all the problems that we create. And what programming language do you use, and why?
I'm all over the place. I'd say if it's a small project, or if it's a data project, obviously I pick Python. But also like small personal projects, I'll pick Python. But I learned a lot of Go. So I was at Cloudflare for a year, 2 years almost. And they were almost exclusively Go. So I picked up on that. And I love Go for like bigger projects where the type safety helps. You want a little bit more speed. But for data stuff, it's just kind of terrible. So I still stick with Python there.
But you write Soul, don't you?
God. I mean, like, we haven't been doing much contract stuff lately, sadly. Like, we wrote the erasure tournament contract. That was pretty much the last thing. I was just looking at it again today. I was kind of sad, but like, I want to update it. I want to do things with it. Now that we have the multi-account stuff, there's like subtle, not bugs, but it's a lingering issue there where we didn't quite plan for multi-accounts. That's why scores were delayed this morning, by the way. It was me testing on multi-account with staking.
I thought they were pretty good.
They were almost on time. Yeah. But yeah, I might dive back in this week. We'll see.
All right. Well, this may not be relevant, but I'm going to ask anyway. Can you tell us your top 3 tips for the tournament?
Oof. I mean, I think a lot of them have already been told to you guys in different forms, right? Which is like, don't aim for maximum returns or maximum or correlation or whatever metric there. You want to maximize your Sharpe or things that take into account volatility, right?
Right.
Because it's going to be much more consistent, and we are seeing volatile periods, even in Kazusugi, where we wouldn't have expected them to happen as much.
Right.
They are happening. But we weathered them pretty well, at least recently. I don't even know.
Well, that's okay. I mean, you're not really in the thick of it like we are.
I'm not deep into the data science, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, it's totally cool. But you're working on Erasure Quant now. That's like your current taking up all your time project, right?
Yeah, that's my 100% of the time right now. Although I still get drawn back. Last week we're doing the redesign on the site. So
well, like you crappy startup, so you get to do all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Who's your favorite team member? Let's throw that gauntlet down.
I mean, it's got to be Ansel just because Ansel's been around the longest. I mean,
that's 3. 3 for the slyest of foxes. He's got a commanding lead. by the way.
I will say though, I was a little bit hesitant. Patrick's been great since Patrick started. Like, it's nice having another senior developer on the team where he just takes a project and he just gets it done. Right? He's just beginning and end in these huge projects too. Like multi-account's been a huge thing.
It's pretty awesome too, having used it.
It's almost here, and it's looking really good.
Yeah. Just a reminder, if you're in Zoom, even if you came in late, send a private message to Patrick in Rocket Chat. He'll add you to the multi-account beta. That was a very nice airdrop of sorts that we can do. Very cool, and thanks for that. Jason, I'm counting you for a Sly Fox vote. Should I quit my PhD program now?
I mean, before we got rid of the leaderboard bonus, maybe. It was getting there. It was getting really close. I don't know. With MMC, if you're a high performer MMC, you're gonna do just fine. It's just a question of where you fall in that MMC leaderboard.
So I think you actually misheard me, but I think your answer still counts because you're effectively saying that I can make enough with MMC to quit my PhD, go all in on my model development, and then just peel off some NMR every time I want to do something fun. Yeah.
I mean, that's the idea, is that you could make a job out of Numerai. We're not quite there, although some people are certainly making close. Yeah.
No, I just did a quick number crunch. If this payout level sustains over what we've had over the past 14 weeks, if this average payout continued, I'd be on pace for about 1,000 a week if I were to peel off just the profit. And in some parts of the world, that is a lot.
It's good salary. Yeah.
And so I think it's amazing. But you have to be very diligent about how you run this stuff and try not to overfit. Yeah, Jason, that's what I have for you. Thanks a lot for taking my questions. And thanks for all the awesome work you're doing. But I want to see you back next week, and let's try the hair tie.
All right, I'll try it. We'll see. I'll have to find a band somewhere. I'll look around.
We're about out of time. Any closing comments? No? Okay, cool. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you in Rocket Chat.